passions of thousands strong. One that isn't without risk, but protected from it. Safe from all the worries and secure for what's to come. Because a better future with the greatest empires, the strongest communities, and the happiest families will always be worth having. That's why the bold and the fearless understand that recreating something better takes courage and strength. So together, let's start shaping a better future today.
A rainy good afternoon, mayors, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our 17th Livable Cities Lab, brought to you in partnership with the League of Cities of the Philippines and Globe Telecom. Today's lab on mobility, building an e-vehicle ecosystem, is presented by the Livable Cities Challenge Philippines and in partnership with Dassault Systems and with the cooperation of the League of Cities, Globe Telecom, and the French Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the Philippines. This lab is part of our series of webinars, which aims to equip cities with knowledge and insights for designing better solutions for their communities through the sharing of best practices. E-vehicles might seem like something so far into the distant future, at least for the Philippines. In fact, they're already here. And we'd like to start the discussion now to see how we can expand and scale up the use of e-vehicles in the Philippines. But first, we need to think about the infrastructure. What will it take to build a thriving ecosystem for e-vehicles here? And what types of e-vehicles should we plan for? Cars, mass transit, tricycles, jeepneys, trucks? Whatever it is we need to begin the discussion right now. There are obvious benefits, like less dependence on oil products, better air quality, and the ability to be powered by renewable energy. But there are plenty of challenges as well. Charging infrastructure, battery exchanges, local policies, and cost, for instance. Today's Livable Cities Lab will focus on what it takes to set up an ecosystem that can make e-vehicles a reality all over the Philippines. We are joined today by a distinguished panel of speakers and experts who will shed light on this matter today. We have Art Tan, CEO of AC Industrials and Integrated Microelectronics, Freddie Tinga, CEO of Global Electric Transport, Maria Corazon Halili-Dichosa, Executive Director of Industry Development Services at the Board of Investments, Department of Trade and Industry, Dr. Manny Biona, Executive Director of the Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines, and Alan Pilz, Business Consultant of Transportation and Mobility Industry from Dassault Systems. Let me now turn you over to Sui Suarez, our moderator for this afternoon's lab. Sui is one of our co-founders and a core team member of the Livable Cities Challenge. He is an energy industry professional with 25 years of experience in communications, corporate social responsibility, commercial oil products businesses, and project management at Shell. He led the global communications campaign for the future of energy at Shell International and was a member of the Shell Scenario Reports on the global economy and environment. Let's please welcome Sui Suarez.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Bill, and welcome everyone to the Livable Cities webinar on mobility, building an e-vehicle ecosystem. Before we begin, let us review a few safety reminders. First, be aware of your surroundings while the webinar is ongoing in case you need to stop due to an emergency. And second, please stay safe and practice social distancing if you are out of your home. Furthermore, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the Livable Cities Facebook page. Questions may be asked in the Zoom Q&A box. Zoom has a feature that allows the audience to vote on questions posted by others by clicking on the thumbs up icon next to the question. And the question with the most votes will rise to the top of the list. Some of these will be answered directly by our speakers or their staff in the Zoom chat box, while other questions may be parked for later in the open forum. If you are joining the webinar on Facebook Live, You may place your questions in the comments section. At the end of the webinar, we invite you to please fill up our feedback survey. Your response will help us improve our Livable Cities Lab series. You may also get a certificate of participation by answering the corresponding question in the survey. We currently have about 200, just over 200 people attending on Zoom, and about less than 20 people, I think, on Facebook Live. And thank you all for spending your afternoon with us at the Livable Cities Lab. Before we get the program going, we'd like to ask you a couple of poll questions. So if you can, please click one of these. The question is, where are you joining us from? So if you can ask our staff to put up the poll question, and if you can pick one of these choices, if it's Metro Manila, rest of Luzon, Visayas, or Mindanao. See, so just click those buttons so that we know where you are this afternoon. And while that's rolling up, let's see where you are today, and we wish you a good afternoon wherever you are. I see, so about just over half are in Metro Manila, and about a fourth is in the rest of Luzon, and the rest are in Visayas and Mindanao. So good afternoon to everybody, wherever you are, and I hope you're all keeping well. Let me bring up one more poll question, and then the question goes, in 2020, what was the global electric car market share? So last year, how many percent are electric cars now amongst the whole population of cars on the planet? So the answers are less than 1%, around 2%, 3%, or 4%. So let's see if you can answer this. Just click one of those buttons, and let's see if we can get this question right. Thank you. Oh, very good. It says about 43%, around 2% ang sinabi, and then 37% said about less than 1%. So about 80% said that it's around 2% or less. The answer is, according to an article published by the International Energy Agency, or the IEA, on January 28 this year, and I quote, backed by existing policy support and additional stimulus measures, the IEA's preliminary estimate is that electric cars worldwide combined to over 3 million and reached a market share of over 4%, making 2020 a record-breaking year for electric mobility. So the answer is about 4% as of last year. And I think we'll pick up some of those facts about electric mobility in the presentations of our experts this afternoon. Again, thank you everyone for joining us and participating in the poll. Let us kick off today's webinar by introducing our first speaker. Mr. Artan is the CEO of AC Industrial Technology Holdings Incorporated and the CEO of Integrated Microelectronics Incorporated. He spent 19 years with American Microsystems Incorporated, or AMI, where he excelled in design engineering and sales. He also served as vice chairman of the Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines Incorporated, and also served as member of the Technical and Business Advisory Board of the Renewable Energy Test Center, LLC. He has taken postgraduate classes in MSEE from the University of Idaho and business courses from Harvard University. To speak to us this afternoon about building an EV ecosystem, let us welcome Mr. Artan. Sir Art, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sui.
Hello, sir.
Good afternoon to everyone. I know that there's quite a bit of topic that we want to cover, and it's quite an exciting topic that we want to embellish on. So I want just to thank Bill, and then and welcome everyone as well as my co-presenters today. So to top it off, I'll start off by trying to talk about our view from where we stand off. But just to give a briefer on this is that, as what Bill mentioned, the EV revolution, or just the ability to be able to put electric vehicles on the road, is the vehicle itself is just one part of the ecosystem. And what we need to do is to understand how this entire ecosystem is going to be put in play. Next, please. So as you mentioned, you know, that it's close to like 4% already. That's there. And mind you that almost half of this is actually being taken up by China. So of the total volume of cars, the electric vehicle cars that was actually consumed last year, half of that was actually in China, and the rest of it was all over the world. But as you can see, the combined direction of where the EV is going is significant, growing at 41%, going at about 27% to 2013. And what's driving this? I think we don't have to think much. We can just look at the way the climate change is affecting everybody, including the Philippines and all parts of the world, to understand that now the requirement of the people is that it is no longer, the governments are being forced to set up policies in order to combat climate change. And the acceleration of this and the effect of this is actually happening also due to the pandemic, because the mobility requirement of the entire world completely changed between how they look at mass transport to personal mobility due to the pandemic and the climate change. So this accelerated this particular direction. And I think the rest of the panelists are going to espouse on also the merits of why this is something that is happening near and now. I think one of the key things that we always grapple with here in the Philippines, and a lot of people have asked me, is that number one, yeah, it's happening all over the world, but it's probably not going to happen in the Philippines yet. And why is that? It's because we're not ready for it, and it's too expensive, and will continue to be a fossil-based economy as far as mobility is concerned. But there is something that we have to be cognizant of, and that is that the entire space, and I will show you that we in AC Industrials were able to touch on all the car manufacturers on a global basis. Every single one of them has already determined that they will transition to electric vehicle by the end of the decade. And so therefore, my question is always, when people ask me that the Philippines will never change, is when the time comes that all the car companies will only produce electrified vehicles, what cars are the Filipinos going to buy? Because our market is only about 500,000 vehicles a year. And I don't think any car company will produce a special car just for the Philippines. And so the reality there is that we will now need to conform to that. And we see this already. Why is it that the fuel that we use are Euro 4, Euro 5, Euro 6 now? It's because the rest of the world has already transitioned to that. And there is a mandate that we will need to be part and parcel of the global direction for carbon neutrality. And I think that's the main driver that we all have to go look at this. So we're at the perfect moment, I think, from a Philippine standpoint, that we're now at a point where we can actually determine the infrastructure setup that we want to do in order to pick and choose the type of EV infrastructure that we want that will work for us. Next, please. So where are we on this? So technically, as with everything else, there's really a complete system that you need to convert over to an EV environment. Of course, that's not the physical vehicle itself, but you need now the grid components, the battery system, the charging infrastructures, the different type of energy sources, which we would like to prefer to be renewable rather than coal-fired, and to be able to put that together. This will incur a significant amount of effort, both from the government sector as well as the private sector. What's unique here that I see is that for the longest time that I've been involved here in the Philippines, especially in the automotive field, the holy grail for the Philippines has always been how to be able to be part of that automotive manufacturing environment. And the view has been how to then follow what Thailand did. Well, I'm here to say that the opportunity now exists because it's a level playing field on an electric vehicle. For us to try to copy Thailand in an internal combustion engine portfolio is no longer is now not necessary, right? First of all, you need the different supply chain for being able to build an electric vehicle as compared to being able to build an internal combustion driven engine car, right? And the nice part about it, and we're going to show you part and parts of it, a majority of the electric vehicle component, the critical ones that is necessary to be able to do this, is already existing in the Philippines. And this is something that we are ahead of. So the key components for us to be able to region for the electric vehicle infrastructure system, as well as the vehicles, actually in our hands. Next, please. So just in parcel, so why do I believe this? So in 2016, and this is about 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago, Ace Industrials, which is part of Ayala Corp, has already decided that we saw a future, as we are touching already a majority part of the world, that there is this transition, this transition that has never happened in the world of mobility for the last 200 years, that is actually unfolding in front of us. And so with that, we then looked at the primary businesses that we have. And so we have the global business that is actually focused on manufacturing and the different parts of the vehicle structure and the enabling technologies necessary in order to continue to drive this electrification of the vehicles, as well as the downstream part, which is the primary Philippine business on the vehicle distribution and vehicle retail. Next, please. So what does that entail? So the portfolio that we have actually covers 38 manufacturing sites from 12 countries and about 18,000 employees worldwide. So this gives us this unique position of this view of what is actually transpiring on a global basis, and not only that, direct access to the technologies that's driving this change everywhere. We work with all the OEMs, the large OEMs in the world, and we are sitting with them as they craft out the roadmap for how they're going to be able to achieve, by the end of the decade, the electrification of all their platforms. And so we see now the bits and pieces and necessary key technologies that is in there. And one thing that is actually interesting is that where in about 2 decades ago, the value proposition inside a vehicle and the amount of electronics that's in it is probably less than 10%. It is now about 25% and on track to become 75% of the value of the vehicle as we go to an electrified vehicle. And there's a 2-track position that's happening here. It's not only the electrification of the vehicle, but the autonomy of the vehicle itself as well. Because then that will drive the safety and the maximum utility of our very limited roadways. As you can imagine, the traffic that we're having is not compounded by the fact that we have a lot of vehicles, is that we have a lot of vehicles with drivers that are actually not optimized. And as we move to a transport system that could be optimized both from a self-driving perspective and a clean, carbon neutral environment, then we can see now the value proposition of how we can then leapfrog all the regional players in the area. So with this is the background that we have and the knowledge base that we're coming from. Next, please. So where is this? So where do we actually touch right now? So as you can see, the different businesses and companies that we have under our portfolio that is operating out of these 12 countries and 38 manufacturing sites actually drive this entire ecosystem for the vehicle and outside of that vehicle, because it's not only the vehicle but also the charging system, as well as the grid manipulation and the transmission and the power supply that actually comes into the vehicle. And this is just a snapshot of all the different capabilities that we have on a global basis. Next, please. So here, what we're trying to do is we like to have the ability to bring forth here in the Philippines, at least the capability and the technology that if we decide as a country that this is really something that we want to be part of and to lead and to leapfrog because of this new field that is happening in the mobility space, is that we have the ability to start touching on the vehicle manufacturing, the distribution, the retail, and the after service as a complete vertical for the whole ecosystem to provide that into the market. Now, I just want to make a quick shout out to Halili-Dichosa, who actually is one of the key components that shows the success of having a private and a public sector work done for a success, which is KTM, the Kami version. This is because we were able to prove that we can produce a two-wheel vehicle here in the Philippines and export it to China competitively. The largest export of our factory right now is about 70% is export, and a majority of those products that we actually produce here is exported and sold in China on a competitive basis. This is to prove the fact that if we actually decide as a country and we work together from a private-public perspective, that we can actually overcome all these myths that the Philippines is a service-backed economy only and not a manufacturing capable country. And this is something that I think is opening up right now, especially in the EV space for us. Next, please. So where is this? Beyond that, as we said, the infrastructure and the environment requires that you have the different pieces in order to make this happen. And this is why you need the supply side for the energy, which is non-fossil based, which is going to help us with carbon neutrality, the distribution utility that's already existing, of course, the different solar panel supplier and the technology that's advanced to be able to provide that application in a non-structured manner, where we have Merlin Solar, and then the distribution part of it, as well as going into the charging station through Greenstrom, which is a new company that's just been put together that will be able to then deliver an integrated solution that we can provide for the charging requirements of different types of EV vehicles. So this is through the network that we've established on a global basis, and the technology that we were able to filter across the world for what works and what does not. And of course, the integration of the payment system, which we already have several different partners that we work with. So here's a snapshot. I know that the time period is very short. I could go on and embellish a lot more on the different parts of it, but this is just a scope of things that I think we could do as a country, as a group. And now we have the different pieces, and the next ones will be to show proof that if we all decide, both from an LGU all the way up to the level of the government and the policymakers, as the private sector is ready, and I hope we will be able to take advantage of this opportunity as the stars have lined up for the Philippines and for us on this EV infrastructure mobility environment. Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone again.
Thank you, Art, for that very informative and also a bit inspirational presentation. So I'd like to highlight just a few things. I liked how you mentioned that the holy grail, possible holy grail for the Philippines in terms of EV manufacturing could be to do something like what Thailand did. And linking that back to one of your final points, which is the collaboration, right? And that example of the KTM two-wheeler is really proof that it is possible to work together and create such an extremely competitive product. Imagine exporting it to China and be competitive there. So that's really incredible. Finally, I like what you mentioned about how the AC Industrial spotted the opportunity, back was it 2016 or 2015, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, from opportunity to strategy to actions, and having these 38 manufacturing sites in 12 countries, just incredible work that's been done by your team. So well done, and thank you for sharing that, Sir Art.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We're off to a great start. But before I introduce our next speaker, in case you've just joined the webinar, there's about 284 people on Zoom. There's a few more in Facebook Live. I would like to remind everyone that if you have questions for Artan or later on from to the other panelists, just put your question in the Zoom Q&A box, or if you're watching on FB Live, just type your question in the comment section, and we'll answer your questions a little later on. So our next speaker, we have Mr. Freddie Tinga. Freddie has spent over 30 years in both the private sector and government. He worked in technology in Anderson Consulting, Siemens Nixdorf, and his own tech startup, K2 Interactive. In finance, he was with Citibank, and in real estate, he was with Metro Pacific Corporation. Freddie also served as the mayor of Taguig City for 9 years, making it the Philippines' fastest growing city. He then was elected to the House of Representatives in 2010, where he chaired the Committee on Information and Communication Technology. Freddie then founded Mid College, now recognized as one of the top creative schools in the Philippines. He followed that up by starting Global Electric Transport. Freddie earned his economics degree from the University of the Philippines, as well as an MBA from the University of Oregon. To speak to us today about moving people to a better tomorrow, let us welcome Sir Freddie. Hi, Freddie.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sui. Thank you for having us on the program and the conference. And this is a very exciting time for this space, as Art had mentioned earlier.
True. On to you, Freddie, for your presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Let me share the presentation, and there you go. So as Sui mentioned, this is a space that's quite exciting, and following up on what Artan had earlier said, it is, I think, high time for us in the Philippines to be pioneers in this space. No, all the assets are there, all the excitement is there, and I think the opportunity is there for us as well. No, and I did come from the wonderful world of local government, and so we face problems every day, just as my colleagues do today. And one of the things that you see with any developing city was the amount of traffic that would come in and the air pollution that came with it. No, so this has always come hand in hand with development. And I think it's important for us not just to push development without thinking about the negative impact of what all this congestion is going to create, but to find a solution to that. An easy fix or an easy culprit to look at is that the fact that our public transport is also the source of this pollution and traffic. You've got 200,000 jeepneys nationwide, and they and the buses account for a majority of the pollution out there. The traffic is coming from the private vehicles because people don't want to ride, the haves, people with money, don't want to ride the public transport. So they in turn take out their own private vehicles and then add to the traffic. So the solution is a better public transport system for the country. And as we are seeing, technology is coming to the rescue, no? And there are two main things out there in the horizon. One is the rise of the electric vehicle, as everyone has been pointing out. We do see the fact that everywhere in the world, including the Philippines, the electric vehicles are going to be taking over. But the other part of this is the rise of the smartphone as a transport device. And when you have the likes of Grab and Uber, and even on the delivery side, the delivery services, where you basically use your cell phone to solve your logistics problems, you're seeing the importance of this technology in solving transport issues in the country. So we started with the vehicle side. We started with the bus, and then we, I think, lucked out by finding a very good engineering partner. And we've been doing this for quite a while, so we know what works and what doesn't. And we gravitated to a company called QEV Technologies based in Barcelona, Spain, that is heavy into Formula E racing. They do a lot of sports cars and that kind of stuff. So they are at the forefront of this technology, and it's good for us because they get to see what's out there. We get to use their technology. So right now, we are rolled out the first air-conditioned, fast-charging electric bus in the country that is also PWD accessible. So this is something that we're very proud of, and this is a solution we feel is going to be critical in fixing the public transport issues in this country. And like I said, it's important that it be a smart system as well. So we're not in the business of just building a vehicle and selling it. Our business model and our approach is we've got to create an ecosystem, which is a word you hear a lot in this space, no? And by doing that, you create not only a sustainable transport solution, you create a smart transport solution. So you're able to monitor the vehicle, you're able to monitor the passengers, you're able to fleet manage something that if you look at the situation in the Philippines, public transport is so chaotic. You know, everybody really is fighting for space, for space on the road, for fares to collect. It's just a terrible system, a terrible way to run public transport. So to do this, you get all these elements. QEV helps us with the engineering design. We've got a partner that's helping us build the vehicles, EV Dynamics, and IMI is providing us a good entry point into the charging solutions because, and this we'd like to stress, you know, for all the talk that we hear about electric vehicles, if you don't have the charging infrastructure in place and the support for it, it's not going to work. So it's very key that anyone who talks about EVs better get involved in understanding the charging side as well. And of course, the intelligence on the other side of the equation, on the app, it's got to become a digital wallet. It's got to help you with fleet tracking. And since you're already getting all this data, you might as well understand who your clients are, who your passengers are, and how better to serve them. So we call it a bayanihan as a business model because you've got to put together the engineers, you've got to put together the tech guys who are programming this stuff. And then they're the guys on the ground in the operations. And this is a very difficult combination because a lot of these guys in the tech space or in the engineering space will not get their hands dirty in the transport world, while the people in the transport operations will not spend time trying to understand how to build an electric vehicle or even program a fleet management system. So when we talk about mobility as a service and the getting vehicles on the road, getting users getting passengers to use an app, getting passengers to ride the vehicle, and so on and so forth, there's actually not a sequence here. You've actually got to do them all at the same time. And we said, you know, the answer to the age-old question of which comes first, the charger or the vehicle, it's both. So that's the kind of investment and that's the kind of activity you have to get into to make this thing work, no? And by doing that, you actually are in a space where the whole world is looking at you, you know, because everyone in the world is trying to figure out a solution to this problem. This is why when heads of state visit the Philippines, there's a very good chance they're going to end up visiting us because they think we do have a solution for this. So we started with the vehicle. It is a 54 kilowatt pack that we have, which gives us a range of over 100 kilometers on a single fast charge. And by doing that, it means we can run the same number of hours a day as any internal combustion engine vehicle. So that's the key. Can you match the number of hours on the road as an ICE vehicle? When you look at the data that our system can provide, I mean, we're getting details like who's on board, how long were they on board, which stop did they get on, what time does is the bus the most efficient. So this helps us provide a much more efficient transport service for our partners. And then we throw in the fact that the app goes beyond just transport. No? So for those who are part of local governments and city organizations, this helps to create a smart city. This helps to create a platform for you to deliver services other than transport. People have loved it. I mean, we've done a lot of miles on these vehicles. We've had a lot of passengers on these vehicles. And the one thing to remember is that, especially with our audience from the local government, and having come from there, is we've got very short windows to deliver to our constituents. So if you're planning on a first world type solution, like a subway or an LRT, chances are your term is done before they even get to see the foundation on the ground, right? So that's an important thing, is immediate satisfaction. Can you satisfy your audience quickly with a high-tech solution? We feel we have that. Obviously, the environmental impact is excellent. I mean, when you take out the carbon emissions from the road, the soot and all of that stuff, Manila will improve, definitely, and then other parts of the country. Just for some economic comparisons, we're seeing that we're going to be doing half of the cost of what a Euro 4 will be operating on the road. But having said that, obviously, this is a more expensive vehicle. So this is why had to get involved in subsidizing vehicle costs and getting involved in vehicle financing. We had to set up the charging infrastructure. We had to set up the fleet management and fare management system. And all of this allows us to go reach out to partners, to LGUs, to corporations, BPOs, et cetera, with a complete solution. Because it's very hard with a new model and a new technology to come in with a piecemeal approach. We've been running in Manila and Davao, and we're starting to get commercial engagements and commercial contracts. And in fact, we will be announcing the launch of our Cebu deployment tomorrow. That's a 30 vehicle rollout for Cebu with some very wonderful business partners there. And Aboitiz is coming in to support on the electricity. And like I mentioned, IMI has been a big supporter. Obviously, Smart's been a big supporter. This thing would not have worked if we didn't have the support that we have had. We're doing a public route modernization in Antipolo to Cubao. We're very excited with this one. So we do have solutions for the jeepney modernization program. BPOs are starting to come in, and the BPO is a great counterflow business model for us. So just as our usual passengers are on their way home, then you've got a new set of passengers taking up what was supposed to be our off hours coming into work. So it allows you to kind of double book the vehicles, if you will. And it's obviously a great way to increase the revenues for a business model like ours. And as more and more companies go green, then we're seeing more and more of these prospective clients knocking on our doors. Same goes for industrial parks. So I mentioned partnerships. So in this case, it's the Lopez Group that's initiating this. They're going to start it off at the First Philippine Industrial Park. And we are seeing that they are going to be going fully electric in a very short period of time in servicing the locators there. Some routes that we're looking to roll out by next year. And so the idea is to connect people, but to do that, you also have to make sure your people are trained, right? So we're doing a partnership with one of our investors as well. They're funny enough, a maritime training company, and they're doing very well in that field. And we said, okay, if you're training people to go on ships, why don't we train our service people and all of these other guys on new electric vehicle technology and service? Our partners at QEV are coming in with an electric delivery truck, electric delivery platform. And so that's a logical next step for us. We're producing 200 units right now, and 55 should be arriving by end of September, end of this month. And because Manila is more like the rest of the world, than, say, New York or California, the solutions we come up with in an environment like this, as Art was mentioning earlier, are solutions you could implement in Latin America, in Africa, and other places like that. So this is an exciting time for us. We feel we have a global solution that we're polishing here in the Philippines. And it's a solution that will be able to transform a lot of urban environments all over the world. So again, thank you for having us for this forum, and we hope to be contributing greatly to making a difference in our country and hopefully in the rest of the world. Thank you again.
Thank you, Freddie. Very enlightening presentation. And I like how you mentioned that which comes first, the EV or the EV charger. And it really harps back to what Art mentioned. You know, it's not the vehicle, it's not the charger, it's the whole ecosystem. You know, that's really good to stress. Congratulations, really good news on what you mentioned. You have such a great roster of partners. And then also so many vehicles coming in, 30 in Cebu, 55 in end of September. I do like even the very practical solutions, like how you're utilizing the backload, right, for the BPOs, because otherwise your vehicle would only be 50% utilized going front ways. But if you get it also utilized on the back ways, it's just great, man.
Exactly.
There's great amount of synergies and efficiencies that can be gained. So thank you, Freddie. And we'll see you later in the open forum.
Yeah, thanks again.
By the way, there's lots of questions in the Q&A chat box now. Napakadami. Feel free, Art and Freddie and the other panelists, to type in some answers there. Otherwise, we'll take them up later. No? And I see that we're also joined by some people in the media. And nandito si Cap. Kumusta ka, Cap? It's good to see you in the audience. So let's move on to our next speaker. Again, a very interesting individual in the space of electric vehicles and also in the academe. Our next speaker is Dr. Manny Biona. So Doc Manny is currently the Executive Director of the Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines and is also a Professor of Mechanical Engineering and the Executive Dean of the Enrique Corazon Jr. Logistics Institute of the De La Salle University. He is a member of the board and technology advisor of Tojo Motors Corporation, one of the biggest local electric vehicle manufacturing companies in the Philippines. He is currently the senior international e-mobility expert on the ongoing World Bank Commission Public Transport EV Road Mapping Initiative for the country, and also leading the development of smart electric vehicles and intelligent charging network system to be piloted under the Urban Mobility Living Laboratory Project of Solutions Plus, Urban Electric Mobility Initiative, and UN Habitat in Pasig City. He is a recipient of the Outstanding Young Scientist Award from the National Academy of Science and Technology in 2011 for his contribution in vehicle energy and emissions modeling. To talk about LGUs and e-mobility, let us welcome Doc Manny Biona. Doc Manny, kamusta? Magandang hapon.
Good afternoon to everyone. Let me just share my screen.
Okay, on to you and your presentation, Doc Manny. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Good afternoon to everyone. So it's my pleasure to join you this afternoon. So I'll be talking about several things this afternoon. First is like to answer the question, why electric vehicles? Mas mahal siya, so why do we push for it? Okay. Next would be I'm gonna give a snapshot of the like sort of economics 101 for Egypt's e-trikes and e-buses, because there's a lot of questions about okay, do they really make economic sense? How expensive they are? Pwede ba bawiin yung gastos, okay, everything. And I would like to provide a snapshot of the EV value chain to see how do we grow EV manufacturing and EV adoption in the country. And I'm going to share the project that I'm heading right now, okay, in Pasig City, and summarize everything into key learnings. So why e-mobility? in a DNR study that we just conducted, we found out that the replacement of all jeepneys in Metro Manila with electric jeepneys saves the country around 8.7 billion annually. So that's only for Metro Manila. It was either clearly that in the dispersion plots that shifting to electric vehicles cleans up the ambient pollution concentrations, makes down significantly the ambient pollution concentrations. Although of course this translates to some additional health impacts in areas where the power is produced, but this is dwarfed by the benefits that adoption provides. Okay, second, Philippines is importing around 98% of its petroleum, and bulk of this used in transport. So shifting to EVs will diversify our primary energy needs, improves our energy security. At the same time, this cuts down the amount of imports that we'll be needing. Third, it is often asked whether are we really saving greenhouse gases when we go EVs. So we've done some fuel cycle analysis of buses, of e-buses, modern jeepneys, and also tricycles. And results clearly shows that you reduce about 50% of greenhouse gases. In the case of e-jeeps, actually, you reduce more than 50%. This, of course, takes into account also the fuel production side. If you look at, for example, coal, the preparation of coal is a lot simpler compared to conversion of crude oil to gasoline or petroleum, and that process produces also a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So if you add them all together, then we see here the figure that we have in front of you right now, and there's a lot of reductions despite having more than 50% of our power from coal. And last but not the least is it's for industry survival, industry preservation, at the same time industry development. As mentioned earlier, the world is going EVs, and we couldn't afford to lose our automotive industry. We have to do something now. And also, electric vehicles are a lot simpler compared to internal combustion engines. So there is no better time than now for the country to have its own car brand. So it's a very simple technology, at least compared to electric vehicles, and that provides us that opportunity. Let's try to look at the economics of e-trikes. Later on, I'm going to shift to e-jeepneys and then eventually e-buses. If you look at e-trikes, on the long term, they provide a lot of financial viability, as proven by the positive net present value. However, the main issue here is investment. So the difference between a Bajaj Maxima Z, for example, with an electric trike is around 244,000 pesos. Okay, although as I've said, in the long term, you get to save something, but this is a major issue considering that we're dealing with a sector that has limited financial capacity. Although certain business models could be introduced, but operators or the transport sector thinks differently. If I have 420,000 pesos, for example, I can buy 2 Bajaj Maxima Z. That's going to earn me more. So they think differently, and that's going to be very, very hard to bid. So in that case, no amount of innovative business models will be able to address this. There should be some restrictions on the use of electric internal combustion engines for e-trikes to really penetrate the market. A similar thing could be seen in e-jeepneys. You have positive returns in the long term, but the major issue is the initial investment. So even though it's good to hear that the government is thinking of introducing greenhouse where it only zero emission vehicles can run, it will have a lot of problems unless government support is provided. this is where actually the other sectors could really could also contribute some share. I'll get to discuss more about that later on. It's an entirely different case when we're talking about buses. Buses right now are just so expensive. Investment cost reference around 18.5 billion. 18.5 billion, and that is just so big for the external benefits to even negate. So in the short term, buses would have to be government invested, or at least government subsidized for it to work financially. But we have to start somewhere, and we have to start now. Battery prices are going down, so electric vehicle prices are also going down. In the years to come, this process becomes financially viable, and we would have start building already that experience in the operations and building the infrastructure to support this process when everything becomes viable. Various people have different ways to look at that in looking at the financials. We can look at it in an optimistic point of view, which means that fuel bill prices will increase and 60% reduction in battery prices by 2030. Another way to look at it would be to look at the pessimistic side of it. It's possible that fuel prices will not change and 0% reduction in battery prices by 2030. I guess what I want to point out here, so this slide basically provides you the gasoline price threshold depending on what is your daily mileage. So we will see here that the viability of e-trikes and e-jeepneys varies a lot depending on the daily mileage. At the same time, they also vary a lot with the gasoline prices. So the area bounded by the upper area bounded by this graph shows the viability region. So it's important to take into account the gasoline prices in the area and also the daily mileage, and then evaluate whether EVs make sense in that area, financially. So it's not a solution fits all. There are certain things that you need to look at. Okay, we did some value chain analysis of the industry. This is just for electric vehicles, but it's pretty much the same. This is just for electric jeepneys, but it's pretty much the same also as with the other vehicle segments. And we will see there's a lot of interconnections between the different stages of the value chain. So this only emphasizes the need for an integrated solution. So for example, the reason why we're not having much activities in the vehicle supply side is there's not much demand. In the same way that one of the reasons also why we're not having much demand is because there are some problems with the quality and the price of the vehicles. So these are all interconnected, and we will be needing some integrated solutions. We tried doing some input-output modeling of the flow chart that I've shown there, the scores of the flow chart I've shown there. These are now the compounded scores. And it's a surprise to see that some of the top items in this barrier list actually could be addressed by the LGUs, or at least the LGU can do a lot of initiatives to address them. So what are the top basics that LGUs can do to promote e-mobility in their area? Okay, number one is to initiate and support pilot and demonstration programs. Because the main issue, if you look at it, it's more on trust of the technology inertia. They're used to using the conventional units, negative technology reputations prior to experience, due to prior experience. So initiate and support pilot and demonstration programs. So build confidence on the technology. Extend the support for first adopters. Okay, and become a focal point for e-mobility multi-stakeholder cooperation. Talking about being a e-mobility focal point, I'd like to share what we're doing right now in Pasig City. So we're setting up an urban living e-mobility laboratory in Pasig City, which will serve as a test bed for e-vehicle technologies and e-vehicle business models. It's science-based in the sense that we'll look at, for example, the emission side, that guides us where to roll out these vehicles, where do they make the most sense. We're developing 2 sets of vehicles for Pasig City, both multi-platform. As we know that local government use is multi-function, so the vehicles that we're designing should be able to adapt to whatever requirements will be needed by the various services of the local government unit. And this will be aided by technology. So as mentioned earlier by Freddie, EV is beyond the vehicle itself. It has to work around the right technology, the right system, and also the right business model. What we're trying in Pasig City is we don't intend to build everything, but intend to develop a system wherein we can pull in together the key stakeholders to build that ecosystem in the e-mobility ecosystem in the area. So this is a 2-year project. We're rolling out the vehicles hopefully by January of next year. We're also rolling out all the other components by January of next year. The main focus here is we're integrating e-mobility in the operations of the local government unit. And this will also be serving some local enterprises for their business-to-business dealings. So I think one thing that I want to highlight in here also is e-mobility is beyond e-jeeps, e-trikes, for it's beyond public transport. As mentioned by Art earlier, the trend is now shifting towards more personal mobility because of this COVID thing. So things could change. But the thing is, we should be able to identify what is needed and respond to them. So what is Pasig try to do here? First is to take the lead, create experience, create trust among the various stakeholders that will be needing later on to upscale this, generate the right product, service, and approach, ensure optimal benefits, and as I've said, attract private sector cooperation. I'd like to end with this slide. Just some summary of the key points. Number 1, e-mobility solution is multifaceted. So it needs also, it needs an integrated approach to roll it out effectively and also to promote it locally. E-mobility solution requires multi-stakeholder cooperation. E-mobility is not just public transport. LGU has an important role to play. And what are these? Take the lead, put in your stakes, and catalyze cooperation. So thank you very much. But for end, I'd like to invite everyone to the Philippine EV Summit this coming September 23 and 24. It's also going to be online. So you can visit the EBAP website to know more about it. Yeah, good afternoon.
Thank you, Doc Manny. Very, very interesting presentation. I like how you summarizes the points in the end. No, my key takeaway ko doon yung what you said about the top 3 things for LGUs. You know, our audience, most of our audience are from LGU. So I like what you mentioned that, you know, the pilot the program, build the experience, build the confidence, support the first adopters, no, and then eventually catalyze more action after that. And earlier on in your slides, I like how you said that e-vehicles are different. No, they're multifaceted. So clearly, may mauna, you know, some types or some form of vehicle services will go first. The others will take a longer time. No, but I think again, going back to what you mentioned in your summary, it's good pilot something and to try to build the expertise, build the trust and confidence in the vehicle system. Thank you, Manny, for that presentation. And we'll see you back later in the open forum. Great. Our next presentation will be our next speaker. We are honored to have Alan Pilz, the business consultant for transportation and mobility industry of Dassault Systems. In his current role, Alan leverages innovative software solutions to help the transportation and mobility industries optimize their current experiences. Alan recently joined Dassault Systems at the beginning of 2020. He has over 20 years of experience working in the automotive industry for several global automotive companies, including Jaguar, Land Rover, MG Motors, SAIC UK, and more recently has been helping new startups in China successfully implement their product lifecycle management solutions. So to welcome, to discuss accelerating e-vehicle development, let us welcome to our webinar, Alan Pilz. Alan, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Sui. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yes,
good. On to you, Alan.
Okay, I'll just share my screen just a sec.
All right.
Okay, so let me begin first of all by explaining who Dassault Systems are. Can you see my screen? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So we are a 3D experience company. We're a purpose-driven company that harmonizing product, nature, and life lies at the heart of everything that we bring to this world. We have around 20,000 passionate people from 130 countries across the globe who are at the heart of the company, people sharing the same values, the same passion for innovation. We also have a large R&D team connected across 69 laboratories, and Dassault Systems has the largest product lifecycle management and 3D experience market share with more than 290,000 customers across 11 countries worldwide. The industry wouldn't be what it is today without Dassault Systems. For more than 40 years, we've been representing the real world. Every decade, we've helped manufacturers to disrupt how products are designed and made, and to rethink their whole development and production methods. And here are just a few of the companies that we are working with to address the new challenges of mobility. On the right side here, you can see an experience that we've developed with the city of Singapore since more than 5 years, and what we call the virtual Singapore. We have a digital 3D model of the city, the digital twin, so as to understand more about the city, to simulate and to anticipate future developments, to develop new services, new experiences for its citizens, to break the silos between all stakeholders in order to collaborate and plan the future of the city. We've identified these 5 key business drivers that are shaping the mobility, the future of mobility based on our global insight of the industry. And we can directly relate these to a Philippines context. Governments, as we discussed earlier, around the world are putting in place legislations and commitments to address the impact that greenhouse gas emissions are having on the environment. This has had a profound impact on the transportation industry, driving them to move from fossil fuel based to more sustainable sources of energy for transport, such as battery electric, hybrid electric, and even hydrogen fuel cell technologies. We see new mobility business models being introduced, and the Philippines is by no means an exception, but could further expand its scope with the last mile delivery solutions we've seen in other countries, such as in India, where a mobility service provider, similar to Grab, have invested in creating an EV factory that can produce 10 million electric scooters per year. And of course, it's in the common interest for the Philippines to be not left behind in these technological advances, but to become part of this paradigm shift and become a contributor, either in the supply chain, infrastructure, or new vehicle startup sectors, as cited in the electric vehicle manufacturing roadmap. Let's see how moving to an electric mobility solution can address the following challenges. One of the many unfortunate casualties of the pandemic has been the oil refinery business, with a number of refineries being closed in the country due to oversupply during these difficult times. Once the country returns back to normal, there will inevitably be an increased reliance on refinery imports to address the surge in demand in the future. Obviously, moving to electric would reduce this dependency and therefore mitigate an upsurge in oil imports needed by the country. And 90% of vehicle emissions within the Philippines are reported to be from within the Metro Manila area, which has a significant impact on the quality of life of its residents. Air quality can be significantly improved if more vehicles in the heavily congested cities were to move to greener energy sources and thus reduce tailpipe emissions. And finally, according to the latest Climate Transparency Report, the Philippines is not on track to meet the 1.5 degrees C world target as set out by the UN Climate Change Paris Agreement. And a key opportunity to reach these targets is to rapidly develop energy efficient transport that will reduce the overall CO2 emissions per vehicle by almost 30%. To meet these challenges and accelerate EV development, existing and new OEMs and startups have had to adjust the way they do business. We've observed three major trends that our customers have adopted to tackle this accelerated market. Players, existing or new, have had to transform the way they work to be able to handle the increased scope of the new technologies with the scale at which their customers expect and in a timely manner. They've had to adapt and develop new technologies to develop products that are reliable and that meet the customer's needs, expectations in terms of affordability, reliability, and performance. And to reduce product development lead times, more than ever, companies and their value chain have needed to collaborate more effectively than ever before. At the same time, during this transformation, consumers' expectations and demands have grown and continue to grow significantly. So the voice of the customer has an important role to play in shaping the future of mobility. Thanks to digitalization, the speed of development is getting incredibly fast. Simulation is replacing real physical prototypes. Manufacturing has to be more flexible, and the way products are being marketed are being transformed. All of these challenges are being addressed by connecting a virtual world with a real world. The 3D Experience platform is a game-changing collaborative environment that empowers businesses and people to innovate in an entirely new way. It allows businesses to become platform companies that transform the relationships and roles across their network. Creating innovative experiences is a complex process, requiring a diversity of knowledge and know-how, implying to connect the dots between people, ideas, and data inside and outside the company. It all starts with the creation of the virtual twin model, so that you can virtually see what you want to accomplish through modeling, simulation, and 3D visualization. Equally important, though, is the real world of execution, because actually making a product or providing a service is how money is made. And in that process, the learning and experience taken from the real world processes are then used to update the digital twin model so that you can not only improve, but unleash new business creativity from a point of in-depth manufacturing knowledge. It's imaginative, it's immersive, it's collaborative, and it's predictive. I would like to now share with you a short video that can give you a glimpse into the virtual twin.
Whether we share or whether we buy, vehicle users value sustainability. And therefore, the first choice we make is which energy platform will we use. Of course, we do not want to compromise. We want a vehicle that performs by delivering the right power on time, with a range that meets daily needs, as well as supporting occasional extended travel. If we do decide to purchase a car, we want it as soon as possible. To meet these demands, automotive manufacturers need to produce vehicles reliably and efficiently. Electric drive systems play a key role in battery electric vehicles. These electric drives are complex, and their performance needs to be optimized across multiple disciplines, including choice of materials, electromagnetic performance, strength and durability, thermal management, lubrication, and noise and vibration. With Dassault Systèmes multi-scale, multi-physics simulation solutions, you have the capability to rapidly engineer high-power density electric drive systems with multidiscipline design integrated simulations to meet performance and durability goals. With the electric drive engineering industry process experience, you will be able to perform motor design optimization using electromagnetic simulations to maximize energy, power, and efficiency while minimizing torque flux, temperature dependency, and weight. Optimize thermal management analysis to maintain operating temperatures across all performance conditions, for example, by optimizing coolant passages. Reduce drive shaft churn losses by making sure contact surfaces are properly lubricated. Ensure casing strength and stiffness meet safety and durability requirements. With end-to-end digital solutions for additive manufacturing, starting from generative design to print and production, you can efficiently minimize weight without sacrificing performance. And much more. Dassault Systèmes provides an end-to-end suite of multi-physics simulations for every aspect of electric drive design and engineering, allowing you to optimize performance and efficiency across multiple disciplines, manage complexity with a model-based systems engineering approach, and deliver high-quality products with a faster time to market, so we can all relax and enjoy the ride.
At Dassault Systèmes, we are very proud to have more than 25 EV makers on the planet using 3D Experience platform. Just look at that diversity: concept cars, SUV, sports cars, ultra high-speed transport, to battery development, two-wheeler and three-wheeler companies. The two-wheeler company from Simple Energy, a new startup, was developed and built in just 9 months using our 3D Experience platform, accelerated by the extensive use of simulation on a virtual twin. On this slide, we are talking about more than 2,000 users daily using the 3D Experience platform to create the most innovative mobility concepts that could one day revolutionize this industry. In terms of different approaches different countries are taking to move to electric, we see in the US, the move to electric is driven by technology advances, whereas in China, the drive to electric has been mandated for several years by the Chinese government, with incentives and initiatives for EV car owners to enjoy subsidies on the purchase of new electric cars, and the issue of free vehicle license plate registration, which for conventional cars are incredibly difficult and expensive to obtain. In the Philippines, to promote the adoption of electrification, focus has to be on total cost of ownership for the end consumer and driven by purpose and practicality. That concludes my presentation. If you'd like to learn more about Dassault Systèmes and how we can help the Philippines and the Philippine industry to increase and accelerate development, then please feel free to reach out to myself or to Christina. Contact details are shown here. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Alan, for that presentation. And it's really interesting how things are coming together, you know, like how the components are available through the Philippines through AC Industrials, how the vehicles are being built by GET, you know, Freddie's company, and that how they're being piloted out there in Pasig through the projects of Manny. It's, you know, I mean, with what you mentioned about the 3D experiential platform, maybe it adds another dimension of testing and piloting to do it via virtual twin, right? Rather than perhaps before going on an actual pilot program, you virtual twin it first before putting it out on the road. So quite interesting stuff, Alan. Thank you. So if you have questions for Alan or other panelists, please put your questions down in the Q&A chat box. There's so many there, and already our panelists are busy answering the questions. Some of them will take up in the open forum. But we've come to our final speaker, and really definitely not the least. No, our final speaker we would like to call Ms. Maria Corazon Halili-Dichosa, the Executive Director of Industry Development Services from the Board of Investments. Director Dichosa is a career executive with more than 25 years in the Board of Investments. As the Executive Director of the Industry Development Services, she handles all industry-related matters and policies of the agency, including representing the agency in various groups for vaccines and in the National Employment Recovery Strategy Task Force. Her presentation today is entitled "The Philippines Towards Automotive Electrification." Let us welcome to Livable Cities Lab Director Dichosa. Hello, Ma'am Cora, how are you?
Hi, Sui, thank you. I'm fine.
Great.
The rains are getting stronger, but it's good.
Oh, yeah, are you able to share your deck? And then
There.
I can see it now, and I can hear you very well. So you can please proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon po sa lahat. So the Philippines is considered as one of the most vulnerable countries in the world due to its archipelagic makeup and location. Typhoons now are stronger and becoming year-round in the Philippines. A lot of people attribute it to climate change resulting from human activities, including transport. So if no mitigating measures are implemented, it is likely to result in continuing and more severe climate changes in the country. We in BOI and DTI see electric vehicles as a key technology in the automotive industry to contribute to sustainable development with lower greenhouse gas emissions, less air pollution for citizens, and new job opportunities with positive social impact. Aside from environmental benefits, we also see the corresponding health benefits of electric vehicles to the Filipino population. Thus, our journey towards automotive electrification as one of the government's mitigating measures to climate change and its impacts in the country. In addition to climate change mitigation, the direction towards electric vehicles is aligned with the recent World Bank study on reconfiguration of Philippine participation in global value chains, or GVCs, which has seen a rapid switch to electric vehicles. It was also noted that EV sales were the least affected by the pandemic in 2020, with Tesla doubling its sales in China to $6.6 billion. In transitioning to EVs, the government is working to create a conducive ecosystem composed of a combination of regulations, information, education, and communication, human resource development, research and development, as well as industry support programs. For regulations, we now have LTO's Administrative Order 2021-039, which provides for the consolidated guidelines in the classification, registration, and operation of all types of electric motor vehicles. We also have DOE's Department Circular number 2021-07-0023, providing for a policy framework on the guidelines for the development, establishment, and operation of electric vehicle charging stations. On the Philippine national standards, to date, there are standards for vehicles, batteries, charging systems, charge ports, battery swapping systems, connectors, and other key parts and components of an electric vehicle. We'll also do a lot of IEC to better inform on the latest developments and correct whatever misconceptions there are on electric vehicles. We'll need to make people aware of the benefits and thus facilitate the adoption of such technologies by the market. In so doing, we will also create the market for locally assembled electric vehicles and generate jobs for Filipinos. On research and development, the BOI coordinates closely with the Department of Science and Technology for the development of new materials like composites and battery manufacture, among others, as well as in the commercialization of research outputs. Product developments such as weight saving through composites and increased use of electronics will likely shift the balance of power from the original equipment manufacturers or OEMs to firms that lead technologically. And then on human resource development, we have been implementing the following. Our MOU with SHED aims to strengthen industry-academe linkages and capacitate the Philippine workforce by, first, determining areas or regions where to extend technical assistance through mapping out of skills requirements and university course offerings. Two, developing niche programs for degree-level disciplines, technical trainings, internships, skills retooling, or retraining programs in collaboration with higher education institutions and training institutions. And third, formulating guidelines in relation to the implementation of the Transnational Higher Education Act, including the development of niche programs between Philippine and foreign higher education institutions. The AS9100 training program was done in partnership with the Metals Industries Research and Development Council of the DOST and the Aerospace Industries Association of the Philippines, with the aim to develop a local pool of aerospace parts suppliers that are AS9100D certified, which could serve the requirements of OEMs. We also did 2 die and mold trainings with MIRDC, the Philippine Die and Mold Association, and the Metalworking Industry Association of the Philippines. The trainings aimed to increase the critical number of skilled labor and introduce advanced production processes and new technologies. The end goal is to meet the technically demanding and growing requirements of manufacturing industries like automotive, aerospace, electronics, and appliance. The JICA project we have on human resource development for the automotive industry has provided Kaizen trainings to several of our auto parts makers. The BOI will further work on this with TESDA and SHED to help develop local automotive suppliers and a pool of skilled technicians and engineers that can also be working for electric vehicles. And lastly, we also collaborated with the Taiwan government and universities and conducted a total of 8 IC design training programs that engage graduating students, faculty members, and professionals in the electrical engineering, electronics and communications engineering, and computer engineering from different colleges and universities. Further, we will leverage on the strength and existing synergies of our priority industries, which include electronics, IT/BPM, shipbuilding, mineral processing, automotive, chemicals including rubber and plastics, and aerospace, among others. As a baseline for the Philippine automotive industry, we have multinational and local manufacturing companies that serve the domestic and export markets. Pre-pandemic, our four-wheel market was around 350,000 units and local production at almost 100,000 units. The motorcycles segment had sales over 1.7 million units and produced 1.2 million units. New registrations of EVs in the country have been increasing for the past 10 years with almost 13,000 registrations to date. Majority are electric motorcycles and electric tricycles, while a small portion is accounted for by e-jeepneys. This trend is expected to continue as demand for solo mobility and EVs has increased during this pandemic as a way to deal with health protocols for many going to work. According to Prescient and Strategic Intelligence in 2018, the global electric vehicle component market reached $22.2 billion and is projected to attain $157.4 billion by 2025, advancing at a compounded annual growth rate of 29.4% during the forecast period of 2019 to 2025. The market is witnessing growth because of the rising adoption of electric vehicles and declining cost of the components used in them. The transition of some electronic assembly firms like Foxconn to electric vehicle assembly will provide some opportunities for the Philippines to enter the electric car global value chain. The World Bank studies show that the country has a couple of building blocks to support a competitive EV industry in terms of converting voluminous quartz and cobalt resources into lithium-ion EV batteries. 2, leveraging electronics strength to transition into EV electronic systems and sub-assemblies. 3rd is design customized integrated circuits for automotive OEMs and Tier 1 companies. And 4th, attracting an automotive outsource facility to form the core of a mega automotive cluster. In this light, the opportunity for us lies in upgrading our participation in the electronics value chains. We can do well by attracting foreign direct investments to complement our local investments in design capacity so that more value added is captured and manufacturing retained and expanded. In this regard, the government has these existing support programs in place. Under CREATE Act, qualified projects may be entitled to fiscal incentives like 4 to 7 years of income tax holiday, 5 or 10 years of enhanced deductions. The list of qualified deductions are shown in the slide. And then duty-free importation of capital equipment, raw materials and accessories, and specific to exporters, 10 years of special corporate income tax of 5%. Qualified projects will be identified in what we call the Strategic Investments Priorities Plan, or SIPP, which is still being formulated. In the meantime, the 2020 Investments Priorities Plan, or IPP, is used as the transitional SIPP, and you can download a copy of it from the BOI website. Relevant activities in the 2020 IPP include the manufacture of vehicles and its parts and components, the manufacture and operation of charging infrastructure, and fleet operations under the Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program of the DOTR. We also have the Motor Vehicle Development Program, or the MVDP, which allows registered program participants to import their knockdown kits at 1% or 0% preferential tariff rate. The importation process is also facilitated by using the tariff heading specific to MVDP participants in our tariff code. And we also have the EV bill in Congress. It may be noted that the Senate version already passed 3rd reading, while the House version has passed 1st reading. We will continue to work with Congress on the immediate passage of the bill that will provide the framework for the EV industry, covering fiscal support aligned with the CREATE law, non-fiscal incentives that will promote the use and manufacture of EVs in the country, establishment of key support infrastructure, including the provision of electricity, human resource development, and research and development. Specific mandates have been given to the DTI, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources to pursue the development of a Philippine electric vehicle industry. So on a final note, we would like to thank our industry stakeholders for their continued partnership. We in BOI and DTI will continue to work hard not only to help build healthier communities, especially in the country, but also to create opportunities for our local companies to increasingly participate in global value chains and develop more competencies as we shift and join the global automotive industry towards connected, autonomous, shared, and electrified, or CASE technologies. Thank you. Back to you, Sui.
Thank you, Director Cora. Ang galing. I really like how I bring it back to what Freddie mentioned kanina. Which comes first, no? The EV or the EV charger? You know, in your case, which comes first? Is it regulation? Is it communications? Is it HR development? Is it R&D? No, it's all of that at the same time. So it's quite a challenging task, no, to you and to other people in the government. But I guess also, as mentioned by Sir Art and other folks here, you're not doing it alone. I mean, the people in industry are helping and collaborating. So thank you for that presentation. Please stay on the screen because we're going to have our panel discussion now. Oh my goodness, we have 22 questions, unanswered questions here. And then let me pick through a few. Well, I have some assistance on getting them together. But before we do that, let's, syempre, we're having a Filipino webinar, so we need to have our picture taken. All right, so let me just ask everybody to come on screen. Let's get also, let's ask the chairman of Livable Cities, Guillermo Lucio, Sir Bill, to join us on the panel. Okay, and if you could just look at your camera now and smile, and our staff will take a picture. Okay, ready? Smile. Yes, I hope they got our picture there. If not, we'll get some more while we're getting our conversation going. So let me just, we're also inviting a few more folks to the, to the panel, maybe some mayors and some journalists that have joined us in our conversation. If you have some questions, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. Let me just kick off with a question here from, this one is addressed to, this one is a question. It was answered by Art, but it was asked by oh, this is our friend, si Cap Maceda, Cap Aguila, no? He says to Mr. Tan, to Art, he asked what a large chunk of the EV vehicles are in China. I think latest statistics, we have 45% of the electric vehicles are in China. What are you seeing that explains this enthusiasm, and what can we adopt in the Philippines to spur the domestic EV sales and readiness? Cap, are you there? Can you come off mute and say hi? Cap, kumusta?
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, Sui, long time no see.
Oh,
And
nga,
good
good to see
afternoon to all panelists.
Yes, good to see you.
Nice rainy afternoon, guys.
Yeah. Would you like to add on to that question? Kasi I brought it up because sinagot siya ni Art, but baka hindi nakita nung ibang tao yung sagot eh. So
okay, well, actually, Mr. Art already answered, no. But I'd like a follow-up question, if I may, no. Mr. Art, you have a unique position of being also looking after the electronics business of the Ayala Group, and of course the very popular automotive brands that you have under AC Motors. Now, you also mentioned that I take note of what you mentioned, that you said that in terms of electronic components, we have the capacity or capability to probably address that market. Now, having said that, is that one of the plans of the brands that you are handling, namely Volkswagen and Kia, perhaps, which are heavy into, or they're very involved in next generation vehicles via these lots of electronic vehicles, actually models that they're trotting out. Having said that, yes, are you looking at perhaps getting in that game so that we can have some business here in the Philippines in that area?
Currently, the group itself, IMI, as you know, is the facility of IMI is beyond the Philippines, but majority of it is also here in the Philippines. Over close to 50% of our total revenue. The total revenue of IMI is already at about $1.2 billion. About half of that is already emanating from the automotive electronics market, and so we're already supplying it. In fact, it will be hard pressed to find a European or a vehicle that is running out in the world right now that's not been touched by the Philippines in that manner, both from a control side, like I said, on the anti-lock braking systems, to the chassis control, to the fuel management system, the ECUs, the steering control, drive-by-wire, and the front collision system using the camera system, both on the rear and the passive system, which is the active system on the front, and the passive system on the rear. So those are already being supported. That's why I make the claim that if we were to have a concerted effort to actually push towards getting a footprint into this regional play for providing EV vehicles, then I think we have the key components in the supply chain to be able to produce that.
Mm-hmm. Just as an additional question, do you think we can even hope for something like the car strategy, but with an electronic or EV component. Maybe in the future we could realize that kind of how shall we say it, volume from the Philippines on the manufacturing side. Can we perhaps supply that kind of volume coming from the Philippines again?
I'm biased there because, like I said earlier, we already proved the concept that we can be competitive and even to China, right? And so I think I've already been one of the proponents. We had this old program. We have a current program called the CARS program that's been implemented, which I don't think actually served its purpose. But I'm actually one of those people at the time who was actually proposing, when we were trying to build that CARS program, that instead of incentivizing companies to continue to produce the internal combustion engine cars and try to catch up to Thailand, why don't we use the funds that we were allocating for that to actually jumpstart and incentivize technologies for an electrified vehicle, so that when this moment comes and it's here faster than what everybody thought it's going to happen, we would have been ahead already and have used that fund for it. So I remain under that premise that it's still not over, but we definitely are now, and the rest of the region has already woken up and providing that focus for Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam. So I think we should actually double our efforts now.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I see a lot of nodding heads here. Anybody would like to add to that answer of Sir Art? No. Okay. So let me thank you, Cap. It's good to see you. Thanks for asking the question.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, keep well. Let me ask this. This is the top voted question that's still in our list. No. So, this is a two-part question. It says it cannot be overlooked. This is from Jose Antonio Villar. He says that it cannot be overlooked that the power industry will now need to produce more energy to power electric vehicles. How can overall emissions be reduced in the Philippines if the country is dependent on coal and combustion or thermal energy, I suppose, for electricity? So that's one. And then yung second part of his questions, the vehicles, of course, no, they have batteries. These batteries could potentially harm the environment if thrown away improperly. How will EV manufacturers or providers ensure the proper disposals, and how would that happen? So maybe I can address it to una kay Freddie, who has experience in managing this fleet of vehicles. And I know Doc Manny, you did some studies already on tracing back the carbon of the electric vehicles in the Philippines, and maybe also Director Dichosa can add on to that. So please, Freddie, you can give it your first step.
Thank you, Sui. Well, with regards to the power, that's something that we are in conversations with the energy generating or power generating sector. And in fact, we do have clients who are asking that for us to make sure that the power we're using for the vehicles is coming from a sustainable source. It's not the easiest thing to do, but in our conversations with the Department of Energy, once you reach a certain volume of power consumption, you can negotiate directly with the power suppliers. So I think that's one thing that people in our industry can look at, is once you reach a certain volume, the government should also try to provide incentives that we go out and reach out to a sustainable source for energy. Another part of that is that we are excited by the fact that those in the power sector are actively working with us. And this is their own drive and initiative to make sure that, as they call it, well to wheel. So from source to actually use, sustainable yan. Now, this is not going to happen overnight, but it's also good to note that most of the new power plants that are going to be coming online are going to be of the sustainable kind. So ma-phase out rin yung mga luma natin. Now, when it comes to the batteries, one of the things to understand with the electric vehicles, particularly if you're using lithium batteries and the like, which you should be at this point, is there is a very long second life to these batteries. We project that in, say, 5 or 6 years, we do about 3,000 cycles on the battery, which should be 5-6 years, given that we'll maybe do 2 cycles a day. that's still going to be at 80%, 70% charging capacity. No? So there's a long life for battery storage for these things, which you don't have with lead acid. So I think the one thing people have to understand is you're actually using a more responsible product with these new lithium batteries than all the thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of lead acid batteries out there. Mas nakakatakot yun, no? So again, for us, it's the proper second life or reuse of these things. And then once you start recycling them there, and I think Art's going to tell you the same thing, there are a lot of parts there that are really recyclable that you're going to be using in the industry. No? So,
good. Thank you, Doc Manny.
Yes,
I know you touched on the the carbon traceback for energy.
Yeah, we did some study that, and even right now, so we base it on the last 3 years of power generation mix of the country. Despite having more than 50% of our power from coal, we're actually saving more than 50% of carbon emissions if you shift to EVs compared to a comparable ICE. But of course, it will always help if that RE share is increased. And I think Fred has also mentioned this already. We have the green power option. And normally, if you run a fleet of EVs, you go beyond the minimum threshold. I think it's around 750 kilowatts. That should be enough for you to buy your own source your own power from green sources. And Fred also mentioned about the second life of EVs, of batteries. He definitely. Especially by Fred, when you dispose your batteries, they still have around 80% of the remaining charge, which would be very useful, for example, in RE applications. So we can see like 5-10 years down the line, we have now mass of these battery EVs, which may now be used for RE battery storage. So it becomes an enabler for a greater integration of RE in the grid, because that's a problem right now. We don't have power storage for the renewables, because renewables are not dependable. So eventually, see a scenario wherein the waste of the EV industry becomes an enabler for the RE industry, and that could still go for an additional 10 to 15 years. And at the end of the life, then they can be recycled. By that time, hopefully, and we're positive because we've got this technology already right now, wherein it allows us to extract the key minerals or components of the battery. So yeah, so 10-15 years from now, I'm sure they'll be commercially viable already. So you've got like a full circular economy in there.
Yeah, great. It's good to know. Thank you for that. Director Dichosa, would you like to add anything on perhaps how we're working with the DOE and the other government agencies on preparing for these?
No, ma'am. I was just going to approve it as well.
Yes,
Okay.
Actually, just want to support the interventions of Doc Manny and Mr. Tinga. In fact, there's a long second life for that. Even in the early days when we were discussing RE or solar power farms, we're already talking about the recycling of these solar panels and this lithium-ion battery. So actually, the RE sector will be a beneficiary of that for those batteries that will be coming from the electric vehicle industry. But also on the renewable energy source, there is currently, and I think it has not yet been lifted, the moratorium of the Department of Energy in terms of coal-fired power plants. So right now, the move is really to have more RE projects in the Philippines. And to support that, we still have the Renewable Energy Act, which provides a very generous package of incentives for RE projects for all sources like solar, wind, even biomass, and runoff river. No? So, and then right now, they're also, and RE power generation has priority dispatch in our grid. Because that is also now a concern that has been raised to us in government by the electronics industry, because some of their clients or customers abroad, they would like to have this their supply chain also is green. So energy will be part of that. So a lot of the initiatives right now of government is going towards RE. And if the companies can be able to tap directly to RE sources, that is something that we would like to encourage as well. So yes, we're working with DOE on this one.
Great answer. Good thing. Good to hear that it's all getting connected up there. Sir Art, something to add?
So can I just add? You already have an example. You already have an example. This is what Tesla does. So the reason why Tesla sells those home power banks, those batteries are actually from the cars. And that's the business model that they have. And then they integrate it into Solar City, which is the solar panels that they sell on the shingles that is then using the byproduct of the reused lithium batteries from the vehicles that they were selling. So that's the ecosystem that we already have available. I just want to make mention that we have Merlin Solar that now applies that capability, which we can actually even put on transport and on refrigerated vans. And so all of these that we can now take out the carbon footprint. So that ecosystem is already available, and it's not going to be. It's something that we look forward to.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never knew that the Tesla Powerwall is a recycled car battery.
They're all recycled car batteries.
Oh, great. There's a question here related to that. Like if there's going to be a lot of electrification in the here we go. In the advent of the EV ecosystem, should we plan for our homes and parking infrastructure, in the same direction already? Can we plan for that? Do we begin future-proofing our homes and buildings, and how can we support this? Okay, this is going to be a broad question. Maybe Alan, from your experience abroad, or maybe also Director Dichosa, if that's something that's being looked at by national government. And by the way, we have Mayor Bernard D. of Cauayan City and Mayor Manuel Saladaga of Mahayag Town, Zamboanga del Sur in the panel. Baka again, we might be taking the lead steps here. But first, maybe Alan can let us know what could be done to future-proof our homes and buildings and wherever else we park our cars, our electric cars.
Interesting topic, because there's a lot of discussion along the lines of V2X, which is vehicle to grid. So one application for electric vehicle is when you're not using the car and your car's parked at home and it's on charge. If your battery's fully charged, it can then turn the power the other way and then supply the grid. So this is another application of how you can make use of all these batteries that are on wheels around the world that can help push power back into the grid, into the local grids and stuff. I mean, if I just look at some of the things I've observed around, from my looking into this, is there's plenty of companies, I mean, in the UK that have got home kits, different kits you can buy for like an add-on appliance that you can easily install with a qualified electrician to the home. So I don't see it being such a problem having those kind of installation kits, fitted and assembled as a kind of an aftermarket type of thing. I mean, the important thing is to be able to get a parking location close enough to the property to be able to charge. So things like high-rise buildings, apartment blocks where you've got basement parking. Maybe we should be thinking about making sure there's dedicated EV parking bays where people can park their cars with close access to the charge stations.
Right. Thank you. How about in the national government, Director Cora? Is there anything, perhaps maybe building codes or things like that, or maybe through the DOE in preparation for having more EV charging?
Yeah. When it comes to more EV charging, that's part of the priority industries or priority activities of the BOI. So we incentivize either like a gasoline station where you have charging stands, or you actually have your bigger charging stations talaga. So that's actually supported by BOI with incentives. Second, on future proofing, in fact, the EV bill that's now in Congress also considers this one. They have provisions like, I think even mandating the malls to have like these charging stations, and you will have like parking slots for EVs, just to encourage the adoption by the market. And then for condominiums or residential condominiums and residences, actually that is also encouraged. But I also recall that we have gadgets that, you know, houses can install. I think the one that was mentioned by Alan. I think we have those that are doing that in the Philippines. They can actually have this. They can actually do it as a business nga, because they can actually have EVs charged on it, and they can put the difference in electricity that was used in charging the vehicle, and that can be paid to the homeowner, something like that. So I think we have bits and pieces of what we can have as part of our infrastructure, and even support market adoption really of electric vehicles. So future-proofing even for residences, you know, own houses. I think that's being done already in the other country, and I think some buildings we already have you know, charging stations like that, where they have some tenants who owns EVs probably charging in that charging station, something like that. So I think there are bits and pieces of that already happening in the country.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. We're running out. We'll take on a few more questions, and then we'll need to wrap up. Let me just there are some questions we want to address to Sir Art and to Freddie. Okay, so I'll mention these two questions. First, what battery technology would be most suitable for the Philippines? Current and promising or upcoming? And of course, maybe more to Sir Art, or maybe also to Manny, what are the chances of manufacturing the battery cells in the Philippines locally? That's one question. And there's another question here. Oh, okay. Maybe Freddie, you can kick off by answering this first. No, to our beloved and best ever ex-mayor Freddie Tinga, this is my question. Can we fully adopt on this GET vehicle all over the Philippines? And when can you see it that we can fully use it? So, okay, maybe let's kick that off from your number one fan, Freddie, and then answer the battery question.
Yeah, I have to find out who that is. Thanks, Sui. You know, I think the time is ripe for electric vehicle deployment, and as we presented, we're starting with the public transport side. We're starting with the public transport side because adoption of the EV as the personal vehicle is not yet there. No, so we're not a market ready for thousands of Teslas running around, but we are ready for a market that's going to ride an electric vehicle to and from work. That is where we are. That's the position we've taken. As we presented, we're approaching this from the point of view of, okay, what is it going to take for this public transport to happen? No, it's a more expensive vehicle. Everybody in this forum has said CapEx is higher, but if you can come in with financing, you can create new revenue streams, you can run the fleet more efficiently, then the returns for somebody running a public transport operation are there. No, so that is where we're coming from, and we're doing that in partnership with a lot of people. I mean, you can just imagine the kind of capital investments you would need to make if you were the experts in the battery technology, if you were the experts in the charging technology, if you were building your own vehicles. I mean, we're a very small company. What we found out is that we're kind of the integrators. And because we understand the world of public transport, we understand a little of the world of IT, and we understand a little of the world of vehicle engineering, we're able to put something together. Now, I think our advantage has been the fact that none of us in our company came from the world of transport. So that means that we were stupid enough to think that we could do this. No, because otherwise, if you're the expert, you look at the scale of what needs to be done, you're going to back away and say, this is impossible to do. No, because like you've been saying, and everybody in this forum, Sui, is there are too many things that need to happen to make the whole thing work. But then you're going to start reaching a tipping point. And I think we're very close to that, where, as Art said, it's right there. You go all over the world. Everyone's focusing on the electric vehicle industry. And hopefully government, and I think DTI as an agency, sila Halili-Dichosa, they're one of the more innovative agencies of government there. Let's support the EV market, the EV supply chain, And I think you guys have to start turning your back on the internal combustion engine vehicle. I mean, we're still at the stage where, there's still support for Euro 4, there's still support for, traditional vehicle manufacturers. Really, to make this thing happen, make a bet. I mean, we've made our bet. We're still around, and I think we're at a very nice position. And we're here because we made the bet. And I think it's people like us, sila Manny and the guys are pushing it. We're small guys. The big boys are ready to come in. They see it. And I think government's got to step in and make this happen. I was in Congress in 2010. The bill that Director Dichosa is describing was already in Congress way back in 2010. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so just to give you some background on this, no? So it's all there for everyone in this forum and everyone who's listening. We are there. I mean, I am really encouraged to hear Art so confident that he wants to take on the world when it comes to EV. He's right. I think we're ready as a country and as an industry to make this thing happen.
Thank you, Freddie. Sir Art.
Yeah, I echo. Of course, I echo Freddie's position on this. But on the battery technology, the battery technology is one of those areas where there's a significant amount of work and technology being done. That's where a lot of focus is being done, because the key component for an electric vehicle is always, one is range, on how to be able to get one charge and be able to drive that vehicle far. And the key variable for that is weight and charge density, right? Energy density and weight. So even if you don't have a very efficient battery, but you have a very lightweight vehicle, you can go far. But if you have a very heavy vehicle, then you have to have a much more power density. So that's really and one of the reasons we looked at being able to produce the batteries here. But again, that's where the different departments in our government are not yet aligned with a single purpose. So I had opportunities for manufacturing batteries here for the next generation vehicle, but the DNR does not like the material that has to be imported into our country to be able to produce. So then it becomes a challenge. There's no that's I think is what we're looking for is a holistic strategy put forth by a government, just like Thailand when they decided we're going to be the Detroit of Asia. As a country, they were going to be a Detroit of Asia. And look where Thailand is now. Right? They produce 3 million vehicles a year, and they only consume less than 1 million. That's where it is now, and that's where we can be with the EV.
Correct. Thank you for that. May follow-up question lang to, and I address this to Manny, and also to Director Cora and to Alan, as we wrap up our panel. So many players, including the EV Association of the Philippines, has been working so long on this. As Freddie said, since 2010, the laws have been there. So what is the one thing? Of course, siyempre, that the chicken, the egg, sabay, or the vehicle and the charging station, sabay. But if there's one thing that can have the biggest impact to this adoption, what would it be? And I address that to Manny, to Director Cora, and Alan, of course, having a broader, global perspective on this. So again, and to wrap up our panel discussion, what do you think is the one thing that can have the biggest impact to set us over? As Freddie said, we're at the tipping point. What's that thing that can send us over that crest? So Manny, you first.
Yeah, the answer is also related to the previous question about the batteries. Last week, we're talking with the CIAPS PBA, which is the Chinese Battery Group Association, manufacturers, and we're asking them, why don't you produce your cells here locally? We have the nickel, we have the cobalt. And their answer is, you don't have the demand. So I think that is also the biggest, the number one thing that needs to be done is to create the demand for the vehicles, so that you create the demand for your supply chain and then they come here. But in the case of the battery, there's another thing. our nickel is not pure enough for battery use. So we cannot leverage it really until we're able to set up a new HPAL plant, which is quite expensive. So to justify a new HPAL plant, you need to have a very big demand as well. So again, that all goes back to creating the demand. So I think that is really the most important thing, is to pass policies that would create the demand. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Thanks.
Thank you, Doc Manny. That's amazing because 12% of the world's nickel comes from the Philippines. Huh? And then we can't produce, refine it pala. Director Cora, what do you think is the one thing to take us over the tipping point?
I think it will have something to do with cost, because as Alan said earlier, you cannot really just force the adoption of the market because we're still a developing country. So if you forced it that you only register EVs for new vehicle registrations, just like the other countries know what they did, and so that proliferated EV adoption in a lot of their provinces. That would not be something that I think would be accepted by the public. So we really have to work on the cost. And of course, we would really need somebody to champion it, like Mr. Tan, something who would really trailblaze the industry for us. And we need a very good policy system for that. We're trying to work on that as Mr. Tinga said, the bills have been there for so long, but we're kind of hopeful for this Congress. I think Senators Win Gatchalian and Congressman Wes Gatchalian are very aggressive in having this bill passed this Congress. So we are really hoping that this bill will pass, because this will really set the framework for a lot of things, because it covers infrastructure, R&D, power, everything. So and then we'll have everything in the bill, and when that is passed, I think we can already push a lot of government agencies, put the policies in place that are needed to really have this adopted and create the market for our locally EV manufacturing assembly as well.
Great, thank you for that, Director Cora. So the cost, and of course, even behind that, the supporting regulatory framework. Thank you, Alan. Final word, care of you and of course of Dassault Systems.
Yeah, just echoing some of the other comments, we need to incentivize the public to make this shift. I think we all recognize that the world, the whole global situation with the increasing in climate is a very serious thing that everybody needs to take into consideration. It's not really something that's subject for debate. We just need to do this. We need to act. And I think, as Freddie mentioned earlier, he's ready. We could be ready to do that. We just need to push over the tipping point. Yes. So look at other countries like China. I lived in China for 11 years. So if I look at how they adopted things, the incentives they have there, as I mentioned in my presentation earlier, that there's a license plate lottery in China, which is extremely difficult to get a new license plate. And in some cities, the license plate costs more than the actual car. So to have the ability to actually have a free license plate with your electric vehicle, it makes it incredibly attractive to people to adopt to that new technology. And also things like road infrastructure. In China, there's restrictions on what traffic can travel on expressways and through the high rush hour traffic. If you've got an EV car, you can go free of charge on the expressway. maybe free charge on tollways here, for example, if you've got an EV vehicle for a period of time. So some kind of incentives that need to be found to try and coerce or to try and direct the opinion of people to go to this direction.
Great. Thank you for that, Alan. Yeah, you're right. Maybe something to nudge people into, doing something different. Great. So I would like to thank everybody who joined us in our panel today, and also our distinguished guests and the other 200, almost 300 people who joined our webinar. It's been a great experience for myself to moderate. But to formally close our webinar, I would like to call on Soleil Manzano from the League of Cities of the Philippines. They are our partner in delivering this webinar series, many webinars already. So Soleil, she joined the League of Cities of the Philippines in 2017 as Program Officer for Special Projects. Her work focuses on program development and management. She graduated from the University of the Philippines in Diliman and is a licensed environmental planner. So to give us our closing remarks, let us please welcome Soleil. Hello, Soleil.
Hi, thank you, Sui. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to our participants from the local government units, especially our city and municipal mayors. Joining us this afternoon is Kawayan City Mayor and LCP Focal Mayor for Infrastructure Development, Mayor Bernardi, Municipality of Mahayag, Mayor Manuel Saladaga, to our colleagues from the Livable Cities Labs, Globe, Dassault Systems, and the French Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the Philippines, and of course to our panelists this afternoon, Mr. Artan, Mr. Freddie Tinga, Dr. Manny Biona, Mr. Alan Pilz, and Director Maria Corazon Dichosa. I'd also like to greet my professor from the UP School of Urban and Regional Planning, Dr. Dina Magnaye, who is also dialed here this afternoon. And of course, I'd like to thank Bill for inviting the League to this event. It is a great pleasure for me to speak here on behalf of the League of Cities of the Philippines and wrap up this afternoon's discussion. We'd like to commend the Livable Cities Challenge for hosting this webinar. We at the League of Cities are proud partners and continue to commit our support to this initiative. We are especially honored to have been part of such a productive afternoon, hearing directly from the movers of this advocacy themselves. We were able to tackle a lot of interesting points today, ranging from the benefits of such a shift in mobility and what systems need to be in place to support this movement. What struck me particularly was how all the presentations come back to the role of local government units in supporting the e-vehicle sector and its potential contributions to the development of our local industries and of the local economy, as well as emphasizing the importance of a multi-stakeholder and holistic approach to make the EV sector work for everyone. We'd like to once again acknowledge the timeliness of the topic as we reassess the public transportation system of the country. This past year has challenged the way we look at mobility and how it affects our urban development. Cutting across various sustainable development goals, specifically goal number 3, 9, and 11, mobility is a mover. Transportation and mobility play a critical role in achieving the SDGs, and it's high time that we discuss ways to ensure that it is efficient, safe, and most of all, sustainable. Coming back to earlier's discussion, there is also the importance given to the environmental benefits brought by the shift to EVs, the potential GHG emissions reduction that is also crucial in the implementation of the climate change action plans of both the national and local governments, not to add the potential of EVs to be part of LGU local transportation plans. We are proud to work with a community dedicated to the same advocacy. We're confident that our cities will be able to apply the learnings from today's session and ensure an ecosystem that will make it possible for e-vehicles to thrive the best way they can for each local context. I truly look forward to seeing even more competitive, sustainable, resilient, and livable cities in the Philippines. Thank you very much to everyone. And before we close, I invite you to answer the feedback form that will appear once you exit this webinar. For those on Zoom, the feedback form will appear on your screen when you exit. For those on Facebook, the feedback form can be accessed through the QR code on your screen. Your response will help us improve our Livable Cities Lab series. You may also get a certificate of participation by answering the corresponding question in the survey. Finally, I'd like to thank our partners, Dassault Systems, the French Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the Philippines, Globe Telecom, and of course, the Livable Cities Challenge. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and have a good day.
Have a good day. It's more than a greeting, but an awesome feeling. A good day is a G-Day, my friend. It's a reward we earn, and then it's also something we can send. A G-Day is a video call to mama to tell her na may view na siya. Daig pang 10 K-drama sa kilig at saya. A G-Day can be sweet, like donuts, with a nice treat to share. Kay Kuya Grab, cause you care. G-Day is shopping. Add to cart if you love it. May freebie pa for ate para di siya masungit. It's a day for sharing, for others to enjoy. Share music, share culture, share pieces of joy. You see, a good day is better when shared sa iba. Kasi nag-enjoy ka na, makatulong ka pa. Mas rewarding ang feeling pag kasama sila, di ba? And maybe, we pray, if we do it this way, this feeling of G-Day can be felt every day. With Globe Rewards, Atin ang G-Day every day. Atin ang mundo. Download the new Globe One app now.
Thank you, everybody. Excellent session today, guys.
Hey, thanks.
Very, very informative. Thanks, everybody.